So My Hero Academia Chapter 393 is finally out, and with it comes the shocking and brutal continuation of the battle between Ochaco and Toga. And sweet niblets on a stick, does this fight pick up the pace? Both Ochaco and Toga go beyond plus ultra. Seriously. But before we begin, don't forget to smash that subscribe button to keep up to date with all of the Lunchtime Crew / My Hero content. And so, without further ado, let's jump right into My Hero Academia Chapter 393, titled A Girl's Ego. This chapter opens up right back where the last chapter left off, with a flashback to Toga, Twice, and the rest of the League of Villains talking about their villain names. Spinner, following on from Twice's question from the last chapter asking Toga why she doesn't have a villain name, realizes that Toga and Shigaraki are the only members of their group that don't have another name. Toga says that she doesn't want a villain name, but both Spinner and Twice begin to come up with names for her, with Spinner suggesting the name the Vampire Carmilla in reference to her vampiric blood-sucking tendencies, and Twice suggesting the name Pikachu. Yep, you heard me right, he suggests the name Pikachu, which funnily enough isn't just a random name to suggest, as it is actually a reference to the sound effect Toga makes when sucking people's blood. Chew chew. Ah yes, because that's what people will associate with Toga, the chew noise she makes. And I'm sure Pokemon would love this character out of all characters in the My Hero world to be called Pikachu. But thank God for Toga and the My Hero marketing team, Dobby points out that both of these suggestions are terrible, as they both reference things that already exist and have existed in this world since before there were even quirks, and also that no one in their right mind would take Toga seriously if she called herself either of these names. So I guess Pokemon now canonically exists in the My Hero world. Mr. Compressed then joins in on the conversation, commenting how it's ironic for Dobby to claim anyone's villain name is terrible, considering his name literally just means cremation. Still annoyed his quirk wasn't officially called that. Shigaraki then goes on to explain that in the old days of quirks, there was no clear distinction between heroes and villains, and it's theorized that originally your hero / villain name used to be given to you by your enemy. However, over time, people started to embrace this comic book idea of having two identities, your secret super one and your normal civilian one, and so they started to come up with their own hero or villain names. This embracement of the double identity is also theorized to be why their world is so much like a comic book today. Why in today's society, people either see you as a hero or a villain, as good or bad, and no in between. But Shigaraki ultimately ends this speech explaining that despite his knowledge on the matter, he still doesn't want or need a villain name. However, Toga, fascinated by this explanation on the origins of super names, states that this is exactly why she joined the league in the first place, because she wanted to create a world that's easier for everyone to live in, a world where a person isn't judged to be solely good or solely evil. So she also and ultimately decides that she will not adopt any other name. She will continue living on as Himiko Toga. And with this, the story cuts right back to the present, where we see Ochaco right after being pierced by Toga's blade, with blood now spurting out of her mouth and chest, desperately wrapping her arms around Toga while explaining that she's not trying to pity Toga. However, with Toga now in her grasp, Ochaco activates her quirk, which initially causes Toga to kick away from Ochaco, but she quickly realizes that being forced to float right now doesn't put her in any real danger, as if Ochaco deactivates her quirk, she can just be caught by the flood of Twices below. With the two girls now slowly floating away from one another, Toga exclaims that while Uraraka is saying all these nice things to her now, as soon as this is all over, she won't hesitate to lock her in a cage and give her the death penalty. Or, even worse, as soon as Toga puts her guard down, Ochaco will just kill her right here, just like they did with Twice. Toga then ends this exclamation stating it's all about winning or losing, living or dying. Uraraka, still bleeding profusely, tries to respond to all of this, claiming that it isn't true, and that Toga is just saying how she thinks everyone else sees her. But before Uraraka can continue with this response, Toga interrupts her, stating that if Ochaco's kindness towards her isn't driven by pity, it must be because of her own ego. And with this statement, her Twice body begins to fade as she announces her brand new super move, Dead Man's Legion. region, as we see copies of numerous heroes, including Ochako herself, begin to appear among the Twice clones. Following this, the story cuts, and we see multiple panels of heroes being completely overwhelmed by the Twice horde, as our perspective zooms out and we see the ungodly number of clones now causing chaos in the world. And I mean, just look at this swarm. It's like a full-on tidal wave of bodies that has gotten so massive they've even started to fill in and destroy the nearest city. This is the true power of Twice. Above this flood of Twice is one of the news reporters in a helicopter, who, in seeing this calamity scourge anything and everything in sight, announces that the QUIRK Doomsday Theory is a theory no longer. It's happening right now. The entire world is about to be changed by the feelings of a single girl. Back over in the middle of the horde, Toga, now floating majestically through the air, in seeing the severely injured Ochako still desperately chasing her down, sends a wave of clones at the hero. However, using Gunhead's martial arts, man, that karate class really helped her, Ochako manages to evade all the incoming clones, causing them to float away if they got too close. Toga, still surrounded by copies, calls out to Ochako that just making the clones float is useless, implying that she should drop them from the sky like Toga did with Curious. But Ochako refuses to fall for Toga's attempts at invoking violence, claiming that her quirk is not meant to hurt others. Uraraka, still bleeding and screaming in pain, then admits that maybe Toga's right. She is being egoistic, and in truth, she can't pretend that Toga never did anything wrong. But as she looks at Toga now, she now understands that there must have been many circumstances that have led her to be the way she is today. And Ochako notes that this must have been why Toga cried during the last war. Toga, now filled to the brim with anger, shouts at Ochako, saying that those tears weren't because of her past, but because Uraraka rejected her. And Uraraka agrees, admitting that it was also her fault. But it couldn't have been just her, as even during their fight in the forest training camp, when Ochako was more terrified of Toga than she's ever been, Toga still had a pure smile of joy on her face. Toga tries to tell Ochako to shut up, but as she does, she begins to think about Twice, and how even when she said she didn't want a villain name, he said that it was a great choice, and that she should live the way she wants to. Uraraka continues, saying that she has already pushed Toga away once, and that she knows that this world is not ideal for people like her. But in truth, she admires the fact that despite the backlash and hatred she gets for it, Toga can talk openly about the things and people she loves. It's also interesting to note that as Uraraka says this, we see an image of Midoriya, which I think is Uraraka admiring the fact that Toga could tell Deku her feelings for him while Uraraka couldn't. In the following panel, we then see child Uraraka watching the hero who inspired her to want to be a hero, except this time after cheering on the hero, she turns back to see a child version of Toga. Uraraka then goes on to say that she thinks Toga's smile is beautiful, and in full honesty, in seeing it, it made her wish that she herself could smile with such pure glee, just like that. And as Toga, with tears in her eyes, remembers her parents telling her that she looked like a deviant whenever she smiled, Ochako cries out, "I can't pretend I didn't see you smiling." Ochako, now full of emotion, reaches out her hand covered in blood towards Toga, and as little sparks of energy begin to shoot out from Ochako's fingertips and an aura of energy starts to surround her, she screams out to Toga, "I want to talk about love with you, Himiko-chan." And with this statement, all the clones surrounding Ochako immediately begin to shoot into the air, as Jiro points out that Ochako's quirk has spread across the battlefield without her even touching any of the clones. That's right, Ochako's quirk has awoken. She can now cause things to float without even touching them. The dear lord! With just Ochako and Toga now floating in front of each other once more, Uraraka says she can't ignore Toga's past crimes and she won't necessarily support everything she does from now on. But if Toga wants to talk to her, she's willing to give her her own blood for the rest of her life. As the story cuts once more to child Toga and Uraraka, where we see Ochako offering her hand to little Toga so she can drink her blood and stop crying. And that's it for chapter 393. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like. For more content like this, subscribe to the Lunchtime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. It's lunchtime.